Welcome to My Views Are My Own podcast. My guest today is Tiffany Duong. Tiffany is an explorer, storyteller. She holds degrees from UCLA and the University of Pennsylvania Carey Law School. When she was inspired by an epic dive trip, she left corporate law to campaign for our planet. Now she writes, speaks, and leads from dense jungles to remote oceans to the changing Arctic. Man, that sounds gnarly. I want to go to the Arctic so bad. Uh, Through her varied work, Tiff gives voice to what's happening in the natural world to inspire meaningful action and lasting change. You can follow her on Instagram, TikTok at Tiff Makes Waves. What's up, Tiffany?
Hello, good morning. How are you, Doug?
So good. I'm glad I'm back on track. So, just for everyone that didn't know, I was in a huge rush to get the podcast set up because, as many of you know, I'm still living in a hotel. Uh, Totally unrelated to all the natural disasters that are happening here, especially on the eastern seaboard and obviously around the world. My disaster was simply that the pipes exploded in my house and my house flooded on its own. Uh, but uh, what's interesting is in this hotel, because I'm close to a lot of places where this is happening, people keep saying to me on the elevators, this is an extended stay, and people on elevators keep going like, "Oh, are you an evacuee?" Because I'm always carrying a kid and I've got a dog, and they're like, "Oh, this guy lives here." And so I thought it's just incredibly timely that I'm interviewing you during this kind of really just absolutely intense time in climate events. So how are you doing?
Um, given the state of the world, I'm doing okay. I'm doing pretty good. Thank you. How about yourself?
Um, yeah, like I said, honestly, man, I'm kind of I feel like I might actually be sad when I leave this hotel. I'm sorry. Because there's free breakfast, there's a pool. Um, where are you joining me from? I know you travel all the time. Where are you at?
Right now, I'm in California, in
Okay, cool.
Sacramento.
Oh yeah, because I saw you say Pacific time, and then I was like, but I thought you were in the Keys. So
I live in the Keys. My home base is in the Keys, but I'm spending some time with family right now.
cool, awesome. Well, I hope you're having a great time in California, but let's get into the serious stuff. While I was reading your bio, I'm just I'm not even gonna pretend that I know what a job in corporate law is. Most of what I know about law is like from watching like Law and Order or like Legally Blonde. That's like, those are I watch a lot of like law procedurals. I don't know anything about kind of what it means to be like a corporate, in corporate law or what you were doing. Can you kind of explain what was your previous career? What was your life like when you were doing that?
Yes, I absolutely can. I was a renewable energy project finance lawyer. I worked in big law for my entire legal career. And that's a super fancy title to say that I used to negotiate and write the contracts to put up those big windmills that you see like on hillsides or solar power arrays. I don't know if anyone's ever made the drive from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, but there's these big solar power towers on the side of the road, four of them that were the biggest in the world at the time. I helped write the contracts for those. So I used to do a whole lot of paperwork to try to do good, important work in renewable energy. But I felt like a glorified paper pusher that was so disconnected from the planet I was trying to save and the people I cared most about and the version of me that felt alive.
Yeah. So you were doing good work. I mean, it's not like you were.
Yeah, I
Uh,
wasn't, like doing any of that like typical lawyer soul sucking stuff. I was always negotiating to try to build a stronger planet. I was always, we celebrated when we made deals because it meant solar farm was coming online and that was going to help us in this fight against the climate crisis.
yeah,
But it wasn't the right lane for me.
yeah. Oh my God. Okay. So I know there's we've already had two technical difficulties, and I forgot the most important thing, which is plugging in my laptop. Will you give me 3 seconds? I know the charger's across the room. I'll be back in 5 seconds.
You're fine.
And I'm back.
Perfect.
I feel like honestly, anybody that listens to this podcast like regularly would be they would be put off a bunch of ridiculous stuff didn't happen in the beginning where like I forgot my microphone or something. Uh, um, I don't remember where I read this, but did you do some stuff with Al Gore? Is that true? Is that
Yes, I'm a trained climate reality project leadership core person. So the former vice president does just his life's legacy is climate work, right? He published Inconvenient Truth and the movies, and that really kickstarted a lot of people's awareness about the climate crisis. And to his credit, he didn't want to leave people just with this, like, wow, I watched this documentary and now I think the world's ending and what do I do? And so he created this model of empowerment and agency, which I really resonated with and respect, where he offers you free training
yeah,
if you commit to learning the stuff. So he calls it the truth in 10 slides. So you can get sit down with you for 10 slides. You could flip through those in, 5 to 10 minutes. Then hopefully you start a conversation that could be the spark of their change, their ripple out. And so he will offer a free training and he rotates them around the world to all these different places having climate impacts to help reach as many different diverse people as possible. So, like floods were here, he might go there next. Earthquakes, like anything that might be connected, he will try to reach those different areas of the world and offer this free training. So I did one in Pittsburgh when I first quit law. That was the first big thing that I committed to, was becoming kind of taking my legal background and what I knew from renewable energy. And then that is really what started helping me find my voice in all this, right? In this
yeah,
world, to create my own legacy, which started in climate, but really found its flow in the ocean.
yeah, yeah. That actually is going to bring me to my next point, but I do want to take one moment back just to former President Gore, I mean former Vice President Gore, to say that when I first saw An Inconvenient Truth, I was like, wow, this is a really powerful documentary. But I'm gonna go ahead and say my favorite thing that he's done in media is his cameos on 30 Rock. It made me decide I really liked do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. I
So
do.
they had a thing where David Schwimmer was supposed to be their like renewable resources guy, and his name was Greenzo, and he got like way too into the part, and he lost his mind, and they had to call Al Gore in to like to kind of clean up the whole situation, and then of course he like at the end they're trying to talk to him, and he's like, hold on. A whale's in trouble. I have to go. So
I
I don't
love
know. That made me think. I was like, this is a cool guy. I would have loved if I just sometimes try to imagine like where we would be now if he had been president in 2000 and we could have started, you know, with if we could have had a president in 2000 who had a realistic view of climate change, we could just have been in a completely different world. But it does sound like you did a lot of amazing work with them, and it does sound like just kind of like I mean I know obviously you're doing your passion now, and that's definitely different than corporate law, but it does seem like your past career does have some pretty epic moments in it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I like lawyering just wasn't for me, but I learned so many things. And people always ask, oh, if you could, go back in time, would you do it again? And I always say, like, yeah, because it led me to this. Like, I love who I am now. And I fought hard to know this version, to create this version, and to also love her. And I couldn't be here without that, right? You
Yeah,
can't have the rainbows without the rain, all those like nice platitudes, but it's true. And in particular with lawyering, I gained such a mastery of written language, which has translated into spoken language for me, and of coalescing really big, complex ideas, being able to understand, climate change nuances and, go and talk to a Girl Scout troop about ocean acidification, right?
yeah,
Break it down in a way that not just they understand, but they care, be like, this seashell, this beautiful seashell is going to break down, because
yeah,
of car pollution and stuff. It's really powerful.
yeah. Mike Tyson has a similar quote to what you just said that I that I liked a lot because someone asked him if he could go back in time and talk to his younger self, if he would like warn him or try to give him guidance or change anything. And he's like, no, I wouldn't have done I wouldn't tell him anything, because he's like, he had to go through all of that so that, I think Mike
To
Tyson
stand
is a,
here.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's like, probably at this point in his life, a kind of a self-actualized person. He's like, he's really kind of doing what he wants to be doing. And it's no longer in, boxing. It's like, it's in just being like, you know, a lot of it's just in comedy. And I think that's kind of like, I get that whole, like, I think about that myself sometimes, like, because I've gone through parts of my life that were tough.
Hmm.
And if I knew then what I know now, those times would not have been so tough. But also, but,
I like that.
but would I go back, and if I could, if I could go back there and be like, whatever you do, pick what you're thinking about choosing to do, choose the opposite, and you're going to go down an easy road. But like, would that have, because I love where I'm at now and I love who I am now. So maybe it's kind of like what you just said. Sometimes you got to just look back at your past and say, well, that's what it is. And that's how I am, who I am now. I don't know. Does that,
No, absolutely. I love what you just said. And I wholeheartedly resonate. Like, I think for me, so like my dad died when I was 17, and that in retrospect has been very formative because it taught me like this all ends, like this all ends, and it can end really suddenly and really fast, and you get this one shot. And so it took me a couple years to really let that sink in. I think just because my coping mechanism for dealing with that grief was to just work really hard and
yeah,
like, stay in line and try not to mess up. And that's like, that is what led me to lawyering a lot, in large part. Like, you know, nothing else will go bad if you do all the right things.
yeah,
And after I left law and I actually got to understand as an adult what that grief meant for me and what losing him meant in my life, and watching my mom really like walk such a beautiful line of grief and living through that, it gave me this perspective of like, life's too freaking short. Like, we have to do what makes us happy, what brings us joy, and not worry so much about messing up at every step. I think when I was younger, I really was like, oh my gosh, if I don't go to law school, what am I going to become? Or if I quit, I'm going to be a loser or a quitter. And like, what's that going to mean for me? What are people going to think?
yeah,
And now I just turned 40 this year. Like, I don't have any of those fears. I haven't had those for at least a decade. Um, and I'm not really scared of like messing things up because I have grown so much confidence and resilience within myself that I know that no matter what comes at me, I can handle it. And that
yeah,
comes from walking those hard battles, Like, when you are tested and you emerge, then you actually know you got some stuff inside that can fight this. And so then you're like, fine, you know what? Bring on the dragons, bring on the grief, bring on the lost jobs, whatever, bring on the hurricane. Like, we will get through, right? I live in Florida now, and it's like that whole hashtag Florida strong, right? Like, it's like they got through some crazy stuff and they're in it right now, and they will get through because they know they can.
yeah, yeah. I think, I don't know if this totally ties into what you were just saying, but I kind of like, you brought this feeling out of me, but thinking about the whole, like, it's like, yeah, you got to, like, you have to go after what it is that calls to you. And like, even, I mean, like, even something that like, you're like the career you were just describing, to me sounds amazing. Like, I would love if someone's like, they're like, hey, what do you do? And I'm like, oh yeah, well, I was just working with Al Gore on this like climate initiative. It's pretty big. I put up all these windmills. You ever driven between LA and Las Vegas? That was me. Like, I'm gonna pour some water. It's,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
still. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
it's somebody's dream career. It just wasn't
Yeah,
mine. Was
yeah,
trying, I was wearing those clothes and the shoes and the whole bit. I remember my first day as a lawyer, I had an empty briefcase because I wanted to look the part. And I just remember feeling like so much imposter syndrome, being like, look at me, I'm a big girl. I'm here at big law with my empty briefcase. Yay. And
yeah,
I just never, in my 6 years of practice, I never shook that feeling that it just wasn't for me. And now, like, there is not a moment of my day that I am not my full authentic self. Like I used to be very like work Tiff and outside Tiff. And I used to kind of think real me is the one that's like 2 hours after work, 2 weekend days, two
Yeah.
weeks a year. And
Yeah.
then work me is like a weird drone robot version.
Yeah.
But at some point I realized, wow, I spend like 80% of my time as work me. Which one's the real one? And that kind of gave me a little bit of a jar. And then I went on that dive trip that changed everything. And I did a lot of crying and a lot of diving. And then I was just like, you know what? I'm going to lean hard into this version
Yeah.
and go for what makes me happy.
I so I wanted to talk to you about the dive trip
Yeah,
first, but this is I think this is where I was maybe was going earlier was and I think a lot of people experience this, and I think it's why it's something like I try to whenever I have an opportunity to like to verbalize this, and right now I feel like I do. This used to bother me kind of because I've always been kind of like a passion project guy more than like a serious career. I mean, like I work, everybody works, but I've done like a lot of construction work and things that they're not my dreams. I just, like I just go and this is what I'm doing so that I can afford to do what I want to do. But I used to kind of like sometimes, if I had some kind of like, I had some lame part-time job that I didn't feel great about or something, and I knew that I was about to go to this happened all the time where I would be kind of like dragged to an event or a party or something, and I knew that there were going to be a lot of successful people there. And the first question everybody always asks you, they're always like, "What do you do?" And like, oftentimes, like my answer is like, I'm driving Lyft because like they want to know what you do for money, like, and
sure,
also there's nothing wrong with driving Lyft. I mean, like, I'm
sure.
sure half the people listening to this probably drive Lyft at least as their second job, just because this is the economy we live in.
Yeah.
But but I used to, because they would be like, "Oh, well, I'm the vice president of whatever at my company," and I'm like, "Well, that's." But now I've grown a lot, and really kind of just in the past few years to where I don't give a shit about that, and also I don't think of the question as, what is your current like income stream type thing. So I'll say something like, well, actually, I just wrote a screenplay. It's an action comedy, and if you want to hear about it, I'll tell you the whole story. And like, I don't have a meeting with I don't have a meeting with anybody. It's just straight up, you know, I'll tell you what I did recently.
Yeah.
I wrote a screenplay, and and that's like, does that make sense? People
Oh
like
my God.
like
Yeah.
nobody paid me to write the screenplay, but that's what I did, and that's what I do. Like, if that's
It's
what,
what moves you.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I know. I totally agree. I think in our 20s and 30s, like there's this societal pressure to define us and to be like, what are you? And like pick a major, pick a career path and like get there, and
yeah,
it's just like in what reality is a human being just the one thing they do, right? We also we're not human doings, we're human beings, right? That's one of my favorite like
yeah,
distinctions. And
yeah. I like
I
that.
think we lose that in our like 20s and 30s hustle. I think late 30s, early 40s, you actually are like, oh, there's so much more to life. And I'm not young anymore, but I still have some time. So like let me embrace these bits of me, that aren't productive per se,
Yeah,
but that bring me a shit ton of joy. Like
yeah,
I used to say, okay, I was a lawyer. And then for a long time, I was like, I'm a former lawyer because I felt like that still gave me some cred. And
yeah,
eventually I got enough confidence and like gave less shits about it. And I was just like, oh no, I'm a writer, I'm an explorer. And like you said, like these are great jobs, right? Like it's what you do. And now I usually lead with, well, I scuba dive.
yeah,
Like it's what I love to do. It's where I love to be. It gives me everything that I need.
yeah. Man, you just gave me so much inspiration, and we'll move on from this from but like the next time I get dragged to some swanky cocktail party and some smug accountant comes up to me and judges me for I'm gonna say, and they ask me what I do, I'm gonna say I skateboard.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
what
if
I do.
someone said that to me, I would be like, dude, can you teach me? Because I have always wanted to learn. And I can't get it.
Yeah, and then boom, then we're at the skate park. You're learning new skills.
Yep.
I mean, fresh
Everyone's
air,
happy. We're
sunshine.
resonating in our
Yeah, yeah,
joy
yes,
together.
yeah. Okay, so I can't believe I took so long to get to this question. You left corporate law. There was a catalyst. You went on a dive trip. What could possibly happen to make you? I mean, other than what we just discussed, like obviously we talk about joy, passion, all that stuff, but like, what was the thing that you saw or experienced?
So to set the scene, this is like 5, 6 years into my corporate law practice after 3 years of law school. So this is almost a decade of me making myself smaller and smaller to fit this like corporate mold that I thought I had to fit, and taking everything that was interesting about me and like slowly cutting it off day by day. And so I was pretty numb by then to anything rocking me. I was very robotic. And I went on this dive trip almost as a retaliation for having to work late one day.
Yeah,
One of the days I was in the office till 3 a.m. by myself, and I got this email invitation to this trip. And I was just like, go, like, screw all this. And I just like responded, fine, I'm in. And I didn't think about it. I ended up there. I was way too newbie a diver to have been there per se. Like I was a good diver. I'm pretty natural in the water, but it's a pretty advanced location. There's lots of currents and things like that.
yeah,
So I ended up there anyways. I went knowing nobody, and that was the most unforeseen gift I could have asked for, because I was a blank slate. Like nobody knew me as lawyer Tiff or unhappy Tiff or even my name, right? Like I was just random diver number 10. And
yeah,
so I got to show up there and not have to front and not have to be like, I'm a lawyer. I got to choose for the first time in 10 years, like how I introduce myself. So I was just like, I'm Tiff. I live in LA, you know, I'm a new diver. And that was the whole persona I got to have. And I think just that, even that removal of that layer of like, I'm a lawyer, that's what you know me as, helped me start embracing new possibilities. Then um, that place is just magic. I don't know if you've ever been to the Galapagos, but
I wish, but
so I
someday,
highly recommend it.
some bucket list
Yes.
location.
Um, so imagine our boat's heading out. It was a live aboard dive cruise, and there was nothing in front of us. You go on a liveaboard so you can go to more remote places. We saw no humans the entire week other than the ones on our boat, which I'd never experienced before, right?
Yeah,
There are these huge sheer cliffs, pink skies, all these like frigate birds flying in the like on top of the cliffs. And I was just imagining how prehistoric this place is, that maybe those used to be pterodactyls. And then I was like, this is where Darwin made all of his discoveries. And I was just like, what is this wild and crazy place that I happened to be on a boat in? And then I
yeah,
looked down and there was bioluminescence and there were dolphins jumping in it, making it like glow and splash. And I was like, this is the most psychotic thing I have ever witnessed. And
yeah,
I like, not even with my eyes, like with my soul, like it pierced me so deep. And then I started crying and I was like, wow, I feel alive. And I think I realized like how foreign that feeling was in that moment. Like I hadn't felt so connected to the earth maybe ever, and so connected to myself in decade. And so I was just like, oh shit, like this is gonna do something. And
yeah,
I kind of let it sit in that just like stew for the week, like just like letting things like come in and really receiving. And then I went on, like, it's one dive that actually like I credit with saving my life. Um, it was my first drift dive ever. Do you know what a drift dive is?
no, I have no idea.
So you jump, usually when you dive, you jump in the water and you just choose where you go, 6 degrees of freedom, go anywhere, do anything.
Oh, is this where you just let the ocean
Awesome.
take you where it
Yes,
takes you? Okay.
yes.
Oh,
So
cool.
a drift dive is like if you imagine Finding Nemo and there's those turtles.
Yeah.
And they're like, whoa, dude, yeah, they're on a current. And the underwater currents can move pretty dang fast. And so it was my first drift dive and they told us it was that. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, it's just going to take us. And I had such a hard time trusting that it was going to be okay. So like I went down and as everyone started to drift off, I was like, oh, the best idea is going to be to stay in control. So I'm going to hold on to this freaking rock at the bottom of the ocean. And I was like gripping with all my might as the water's trying to pull me. And I was like holding on. And I was like, if you let go, you will die. Don't do it. You can't let go. And then I saw people getting like smaller and smaller. And I was like, wait a second. I'm going to be left at the bottom of this like foreign ass ocean by myself.
Yeah.
No one's going to find me. I'm actually going to die if I don't let go. And just that physical process and the fear and having to be like, just let go. Like, you
Yeah.
gotta trust, changed me like forever,
Oh
you
my God.
know?
It's like that rock was like a metaphor for
Yeah,
like
totally.
it's
Absolutely. Like
you
I
like
need
you
to
were a living
find that rock.
metaphor.
I need to find that rock and thank it for saving my life.
I would
But
do that. I believe in doing things like that. I seriously do. I believe
I'm
that
oh, I am not joking.
yeah.
I didn't think of it till now, but like I do owe that rock a big debt of gratitude. So I let go. I went flying in the current and it was so fun.
Yeah.
And that just like that flip of fear into flying is what made me start embracing like, okay, maybe I need to let go of being a lawyer. Maybe I need to let go of living in LA and being like,
Yeah.
having a job that seems prestigious and that people validate me for, that people are like, wow, that must be amazing, because I don't think it's amazing. I need to find something that I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm a scuba diver, like that much enthusiasm, like hell yeah, I skateboard. I need
Yeah.
to find something like that.
Yeah. Man, that okay, so I I think I almost pride myself on being someone who doesn't have FOMO frequently, because I feel like it's that's not a good way to live, but
Yeah.
I just experienced it so much. Just that whole story. First of all, I wanted to go to the beautiful Galapagos Islands. I was like, "Oh, that sounds amazing." I was, and I've never like really been scuba diving. I've only been like snorkeling and stuff, so I don't
Oh
even
my
know.
gosh.
So I
We'll
don't know
trade.
the experience. Yeah, I'll teach you how to skate. And you give me
Yeah,
yeah,
seriously.
yeah. But then I was like, but then the story of like, because also I know what it's like to hold on to something. I actually went through a long transformative process. When we first started talking earlier about grief, I had to go through a long process with that. I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know what to do with it. And it was coming out in bad ways. It was making me toxic. It was making me have making me kind of one of those, I'll just fully admit it, one of those guys that had a warped masculinity view just
Hmm.
because, and ultimately what it was is I was holding on to grief. I didn't know how to process it, let it go. It comes, get it out of you. And then when I finally started doing that, I was like, why am I mad? I'm not mad. Nothing, and but your story about the rock, man, and 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 being a living metaphor for a second, and then being like, realizing that like I have to just let go, and then you let go, and then instead of something it's scary happening, something just amazing and fun and thrilling and life changing happens, and that is so often the case when you just let go, and it's so hard to let go. I think that's
Yeah.
like you could take that metaphor a million billion different ways of just if you could just learn to let go, and I don't mean that in the sense like obviously and like we've both lost people and stuff, and it does when I say let go when I talk about grief, I don't mean let go of your memories.
No.
Don't forget the person. That's not what letting go means. It doesn't mean you go, well, they're gone, poof, out of sight, out of mind forever. That's not what it means. And obviously it's deeper, and we're not going to get into that on this. We got way too much to get to, and you have a hard out, so I'm going to start moving us along. But thank you for sharing that. That sounds just incredible. It makes me want to get out today. I want to go find a rock and hold on to it
And hug it
and
and then
let
let
go of it.
go.
Because what's that quote? I love it so much, and it's so true. And not always. Like if you're being chased by like a pack of wolves, you know, uh, the thing you want is not on the other side of fear. You should probably keep running. But like I think the quote is the the life you're seeking is
Everything you want's on the other side of fear.
on the other side of fear. Like yeah,
Yeah,
and
totally. I
90
totally
yeah,
agree.
90% of the time that is true. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
10% of the time
Not the
that's
wolf.
10% of the time that is actually a recipe to be eaten. Okay, moving on. Just I want to ask you so much stuff. But I know you got a heart out. You're a very busy person, and also once again, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
So all right, you let go of the rock. You went with the flow. You went with the Finding Nemo turtles. Now here you are. How do you describe what it is that you do now? Like and like mission, purpose, uh all that kind of stuff.
So I usually start, it's never a simple answer. I usually say I'm an explorer and storyteller and a scuba diver. And then when people say, what does that mean? And then I kind of say, well, if it seems kind of weird or fun, and it has to do with the water, I've either tried it, want to try it next, or I have written about it as a ocean storyteller or a reporter. And that for the most part covers it. Like I've worn a shark costume to protest against unsustainable seafood, standing in front of like Whole Foods. I have lobbied at city councils to bring back streams so that salmon can run. I've been a coral restoration scientific diver. I've gone on shark tagging missions. I now run 2 nonprofits. I have a all women's VR development team. And I kind of really am just joy led. And for me, joy is like the next sparkly thing. And so it's like, if it sounds cool, I'll probably say yes, and I'll find a way to make it happen.
Yeah. It's it's interesting to me because I feel like I think we have different personality types, and I don't know like how to describe them. But when you're saying like what all you do, I'm
Yeah.
like you still definitely have that whatever drove or drive you had as a corporate lawyer when you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna be the hardest, meanest corporate lawyer the side of the Rio Grande, like they don't want to let me put the windmills up. I'm gonna put the windmills up, and and I respect that for sure. But it sounds like too, like now that you're uh I don't want to sound corny, but like following your bliss, like how
Yeah.
in the more like the
Yeah.
Buddhist sense, it still sounds like you've got that, that hard ass lawyer type work ethic, because you're like just the amount of stuff you just said that you're doing, I was like, that's that sounds, I mean, that's an incredible workload. I just
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I work harder now than I did as a lawyer, and I used to work a shit ton as a lawyer.
yeah.
But
But if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
well, you work so much more, but it's worth it.
Yeah, man. All right, guys. I'm gonna take one step back and apologize. I have said so many cliches in this podcast. From here, if I say another one, well, nobody can slap me. I'm here alone. But I'll pinch myself. That's what I'll do. All right. So um let's talk about like just okay. I mean, you just mentioned so many projects. I don't even know which one to kind of like aim at. So I'm just gonna like, this is like a
Yeah.
sandbox
Yeah.
question. But one of like what is one of the most promising actions toward protecting the environment that you've been involved in? Like, like for instance, you were saying you're shark tagging. Obviously, that's super important. All these other things. Like, what's something where you're like, wow, man, like this right here, I feel like this moved the needle.
So I'll tell you about my 2 nonprofits,
Okay.
because these are labors of love. We started them within the last year and year and a half, and they both give me a lot of um, agency and purpose. So the first one is called Telecoral, and it is to support this coral reef in Honduras. And it's a place that we call it the Rebel Reef. I'm super proud of that name.
Yeah, it's cool.
Because it it defies everything that we know about coral science. Like it's where Chiquita banana started, and so it's had like 150 200 years of industrial runoff and pollution. There's raw sewage going into the ocean still. There's it's hot, it's silty, it's got all these ingredients that usually kill corals, but the coral there are thriving, and they are more alive than anywhere else in the Caribbean I've ever seen, and nobody knows why. They discovered this reef just over 10 years ago, so it's like new to science, unknown, and nobody has studied it. And I
Yeah.
was like, what the heck? Like, you have this crazy reef of super corals and nobody cares? Like, no one is paying attention. So we
Yeah.
started this nonprofit to study it and to bring science down and storytelling. And we're really in a good flow now. We are finalists for this thing called the Hidden Compass Pathfinder Prize to make a documentary about it and a VR experience so that anyone, even if they're not a diver, can experience how cool this place is.
Yeah.
And then we have brought down kids and citizen scientists to help us do the baseline science that we can't get like universities to come do. So that one has just shown me how much hope matters, right? That place is hope. That place is generating hope, and it fills up my hope tank so that I can, be this excited when I share it with people.
Yeah.
The second one I'll tell you about is the Seabirds Foundation, which is my newer nonprofit, and it gives me so much hope for the future. It's basically a bunch of people who are like me. Like I found a little crew of non-traditional explorers. Like I'm not a scientist. I didn't have anyone in my family who was like, oh, Auntie Teresa's an explorer. You can be too. I was just like, oh my God, I love to dive and I want to do nothing but dive and explore the ocean and try to save it.
Yeah.
And so it's a bunch of people like me and who were like, you know what? We're going to make an all women's expedition team. We're going to go to Antarctica. We're going to Arctic, everywhere in between. We're going to do the science. We're going to use citizen science to engage with the world. And we're going to show the next generation, you know, that anyone can be an explorer and anyone can make a difference. So we have moms who have come on expedition with us who will Zoom with their kids' classroom from Antarctica and be like, hi, like I'm mom, I'm here. And the kids are like, oh, like my mom could also do this. So we're changing the narrative, especially for women and especially for non-scientists, that they still can make a difference and that they still can impact this planet in such a positive way.
Yeah. Okay, that's a lot to unpack, and I'm just gonna ask a couple questions about
Yeah.
both. All right, first nonprofit in Rebel Reef, and I forgot the
Honduras. Yep.
Tele Honduras, um, and also like what you were saying about bringing people down there.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the people of Tele Honduras could really use. It would be amazing for there to be an ecotourism type element there because,
Yep.
yeah, not to go off on a whole tangent, but from what I know about Chiquita Banana, there should be some competing employment down there, and so that would be just I would urge anybody that can do it, go down to Tele Honduras, and if you can help, and honestly, just being down there and and seeing what's happening is helping, and yeah, like so that sounds amazing. That sounds like something that I would love. I would love to
You're
visit
welcome to
there.
join us. We go twice a year.
I'm gonna I'm gonna I'm gonna do everything I can to make that happen. When's the next expedition?
It'll be in June of next year.
That actually gives me time to make this a realistic thing.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm putting it on my calendar right now. So that's how it makes it real. And then, of course, second nonprofit,
The Seabirds.
Seabirds. Same thing too. When you get people involved, when they're there personally, when they're there experiencing it, that's one of those things that I truly think that's where you start to really see the uh like when you say meaningful change, it's like, this person has a personal connection to
Mhm.
whatever it may be. Did you guys went to the up to the Arctic, right? To something with
And
whales?
Antarctica.
And you went to Antarctica? Oh man, I'm so
Yeah.
jealous.
So we swam with orcas in the Arctic, and then we did an Antarctic expedition in February of this year.
Orca is my favorite animal.
Oh, we're going back to do the orca study and swim again next November.
Do you allow dudes, or is this because I know this is
This one's an all women's expedition,
okay?
but there are opportunities.
Okay. Man, I will.
Let's talk offline about it.
Okay, you do so much cool stuff. Oh my god. Now
I
I don't know
told
if
you I do whatever sounds fun and
you do
weird.
it all. You do it all. I'm like, do I want to go to Tell Hunters? No, man, I want to swim with the orcas. Okay, it's a women only. That makes that choice a little bit easier. Uh, um. Also, okay. So just moving on. Just so like speaking like just kind of on the topic of the coral reefs. Uh, you write a lot about marine sanctuaries. I know you do some work with marine sanctuaries. Just for everybody that is not familiar with that term, what is a marine sanctuary? How does that work?
So it is if you think of the national parks, right, on land,
Yeah.
it's a place where governments and communities have agreed, hopefully, that more protections are needed because there's something biologically, ecologically important there, or culturally, right? And so if you take that idea and you put it in the ocean, it's the same. So usually marine sanctuaries are places where, say, like whales calve, right? They come and they have their babies and nourish their babies so they grow big and strong to make a migration, or where there's a irreplaceable coral reef or something like that, or lots of fish spawning. And so these marine sanctuaries are boundaried on a map there are places where protections exist, hopefully to help nature recover and regenerate. The cool thing about water and land is that wildlife populations don't see these map boundaries that, you know, humans have drawn. And so when you protect this area and you let all these like babies and things live, they flow out. And so there's been studies that right outside of marine sanctuaries, there's a lot of increase in biodiversity, biomass, and of life and different genetic diversity.
Yeah. You know, it would be, I mean, look, I understand, like, I always want things to, like, I want to go back to 2000 and make Al Gore be the president and have, you know, some environmental protection mandates. But just thinking about, like, the entire ocean should be a marine sanctuary. That's my
Yeah.
personal opinion on that. Hey, can I add a quick anecdote? Because I
Yeah.
just realized when we were talking about orcas, I'm sorry, I was just checking the chat. uh, talking about orcas. Oh, I swam with pilot whales one time, which are
That's cool.
they're small for whales, but they're really big if you're in the water with them. It wasn't
Yeah, they're big for humans.
yeah, they're big for human. Oh man, I was so scared. So it wasn't on purpose. We didn't like seek out the pilot whales. I was on a boat and we had a rule on the boat, like so that everybody wouldn't stink. That every morning, and we took turns doing it. So not, you know, we didn't all just jump in the water. There was always like most people were on the boat, but two at a time, everybody had to jump in the water and just like with a bar of soap and just kind of like, you know, just take a quick little bath in the ocean before you. So like it was just like a rule. It was like a boat rule. Like, you know, so everybody wasn't, you know, everybody wasn't gross. It was, you know, it was a sailboat. There was no shower. There was no toilet. There was no nothing. It was like bare bones.
Yeah.
And then one day they were like, Doug, jump in. You stink. And I was like, there's monsters in there. And I know they're pilot whales and I know they would never hurt you, but they're just like, I never had been in the water with something so big.
Oh
And
yeah.
I mean, they're as big as the boat, you know, and I was like jumping in there. I was like, man, this guy is swimming underneath me and it's as big as the boat. So,
And they're
man,
like, yeah, go scrub up.
that's a, you know what that is? That's a let go of the rock and go with the flow situation. Because after
And
I
you
did
did.
it, now I got that story too. I'm like, yo, man, I swam with pilot whales and I'm gonna swim with orcas. We'll discuss that after the podcast.
Yeah, we'll
How
make it happen.
um okay, so this is just kind of like looking into the future. And you know, it could be anything. You know, this could even be sci-fi. You know, but honestly, I'm just kind of curious what you're seeing. I know you're plugged in to what everybody's doing. You know, you're working with like people in on all walks of, you know, of what, you know, trying to save this planet from, you know, climate disasters and what's happening right now, these mega storms and fossil fuels. Uh, what is like, are there any like, is there any kind of like exciting development or technology or programs, something along those lines that that you think could be happening in the future, maybe the near future, maybe the middle future, that will be a huge win for environmental protection, like something that you think is really exciting to look at?
So it seems corny, but it's not. The first thing that comes to mind is actually like this next generation of like activists, like people who are in
Yeah,
their
hell
like
yeah.
teens and 20s right now. They care so much. They are so aware and they are plugged in and they are not scared. And it is something that like I've just never witnessed. You know, like I was worried about fitting in and walking the path and all that. And they're just like, the path is gone. It's burned up. You know, take action. And that's so brave at that age. And I'm really
Yeah,
excited for when they actually can get into places of power because they're doing like what Al Gore did, you know, back in the 90s. Like they're talking truth to power. They're yelling it out and they're like, yo, people, like we're fucking it up.
yeah,
And they actually are behaving as a generation, like based off of core values that I resonate with. Like they thrift, they do meatless Mondays, they get involved, they speak out at city councils, and like all these things that I don't think our generation was even aware we needed to be doing. They're
yeah.
doing at such a young age. So I really am excited about that next generation. All the people that I know who are really leading that charge, inspire me, like, and they're 10, 20 years younger than me. And I think it's so cool to
Yeah.
work intergenerationally. On a tech side, I am really interested in food tech. Like, I think it's like we all have to eat, right? And I believe in these big movements that could try to help save the planet,
Yeah.
meeting people where they are. So people might not go vegan necessarily. Like, I'm guilty. I love a good steak. Like, it's super guilty pleasures. But like, there's food tech where it's like you can make like Blue Nalu and Finless Foods are making a cell-based fish, which is like they take a cell from a real fish,
Yeah.
they put it into like a brewery tank. Do you know about this?
Well, we were talking, I assume we're talking about lab grown meat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think lab grown meat and fish is freaking cool because you get rid of all the
I
contaminants,
think it's the future.
and
It's
yeah, and you can feed people like the real protein that
yeah.
they need and they want, and you can make it like cleaner and you don't have to deplete the earth. So things like that give me a lot of hope.
I have strong opinions on lab grown meat. And, I guess it's like, here's the thing is the word lab grown or the words lab grown. People go like, they go, ew. And I'm like, first of all, do you know how much the food you're already eating came out of a lab?
Yep.
Most of it. Also, do you know that real meat? Oh, sorry, everyone listening can't see my quotation marks, but that real meat you're eating, how much of that is out of a lab? Do you know how many pharmaceuticals they fed to those cows? Well, that they burned down, 1 million acres of rainforest. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I could go on and on and on, but the thing is, like, it's the same thing. It's a little bit healthier, and they didn't have to torture and kill a living creature to make it.
Yeah.
Nor did
Or
they have to,
strip the earth.
nor did they have to like add 10,000 pounds of carbon per per
Yeah.
bite of steak you're getting. So
Yeah.
I just sorry, that was my soapbox on that. But no, I think lab grown meat is the future. I think people will get over it pretty quick, especially like once you taste it and you're like, hey,
It's
no,
the same.
no animals were harmed in the making of this steak burrito, and
Yeah.
it's good, like it's good,
It is a steak.
yeah.
Like, it's a steak.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think it's the future. I hope we get there sooner rather than later. I think it's so cool.
And moving back to what you said before, that I also I love you saying that as the future is, the people who will be here in the future, and that's
Yeah.
we got an army of Greta Thunbergs coming. We're coming for you, Chevron.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, you got me pretty excited right there. So um, I guess I was gonna ask, like, just kind of like for people, 'cause sometimes I feel like we get a little bit like doomerish, especially if you just keep looking at all the if you just look at reality, you're like, oh no, it's all over, and nobody wants to be told to do something. Nobody wants to be like, you recycle, you fix it. It's like, well, no, BP needs to quit dumping 10,000 barrels of oil into the ocean every year. Like they're like the U.S. Navy needs to stop doing. Carnival Cruise needs to stop. So it's kind of one of those things where you're like, what do you mean I need to do something? But it does feel good to do something. So if you were just kind of like offhand saying like, hey, what's something that you like would say like, here's just one little thing you can do. It'll make you feel a little bit better. It's not that hard. And if most of us were doing it, once again, it would move the needle. It would change things in a significant
Absolutely.
way.
So the first thing I will say is, like, in all like individual action, it's so easy to be like, well, I can't do it perfectly, so I shouldn't do it. And it's like imperfect action is better than perfect non-action.
Yeah.
So you know what? Like, if you can't go vegan, try meatless Monday. If you can't do meatless Monday, try just getting a salad for lunch one day if you were going to get a burger, right? Like, every little action can help.
Yeah.
Um, so like, don't hold yourself to this like perfectionist standard for eco action and for giving a shit, right? Like, a little shit's better than no shit.
Yeah.
Um, on that front though, like like trying to eat sustainable seafood, like ask how your fish is caught, ask where it's from. There are tons of lists out there that are trying to help guide consumers to know what is more sustainable than not, farmed versus fresh caught, big trawl nets versus line caught. There's a ton. We could talk forever about that. Um, I also would say when you're traveling, if you can try to do, like, I travel a lot. It's one of the ways that I know I am contributing to this crisis, but I try to combine my trips. So I try to not go anywhere less than 3 weeks at a time. Um, right. I'm not popping in and out for short vacations. I have the luxury of that because I am my own boss.
Yeah.
And I can work from anywhere. But like so I'm like, if I have a talk, then I will tack on a vacation and, go see this person for business so that it becomes more purposeful for that travel. And I take public transportation whenever I can. And then the last thing I would say, which again is, it needs repeating and it's not sexy, but it's to like vote, right?
Yeah.
Vote for politicians and use your voice in your vote, use your wallet, support companies that have the same values as you. There's so many lists out there of, which big corporations are doing more harm, which are doing less. And then you can also, if you want to get deeper down in that, divest your money from these people that are funding fossil fuels.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's hit them in the wallet. And also, like you said too, with this is one thing when you say vote, and I know, like you said, it doesn't sound sexy. These days everybody's so cynical. But I will say this is I've noticed every time I go to a city that has what I would consider a cool mayor, or like,
Mhm.
or even better, a history of cool mayors. What you see is, you see bicycles, and you see a lot of bicycles. You see people riding bicycles safely because they make bike lanes. You see public transportation that works, like, and those those types of things. Those, I don't want to call them amenities, but it almost feels that way. But like, a city that has uh green transportation didn't just come like that. That's because they voted for a mayor that was going to work towards that. And so, yeah, don't vote for a piece of shit, I guess, is
Yeah,
honestly, yeah,
good
like,
life advice.
yeah. If someone who's, and I know I'm just talking about local elections, but that's where it feels like you can make the most
No, it makes a
difference.
huge
And
difference.
yeah, we recently just got a mayor, and that's one of his big things. He's like, I'm trying to get some green transportation in here, and like, now all of a sudden I like this guy. And then, I hate politicians, but I'm like, well, okay, if he wants to make green transportation,
Let's do it.
I'm on his side. We're on the same team
Yeah.
here. Uh, those were all great. Those were all great. Everything you said, I loved all of it. Um, I know I've got you for just a little bit longer here, and I just want to ask you a couple stories.
Yeah.
Here's a quick one though. This is just, I know. Yeah, this is, the story is, you're from LA. You've been around a million movie sets. The only time you ever were on a set, you accidentally walked onto like CSI or something like that, some kind
Hmm.
of criminal
Hmm.
procedural. But no, you got to be in a real movie by the Divers Alert Network. Uh, what was it like being on a movie set and doing what you did?
So Divers Alert Network is a safety-based organization for divers. And so there's a lot of training videos and courses you can take to say like, oh, if someone has a heart attack in the water, what do you do? If someone gets a shark bite, what do you do? And they were filming their next set of training videos in the Florida Keys where I live. And they just acquired some Asian offices into their network. So they wanted to have good representation. And there are just not a lot of Asian people in the Keys at all. And especially not Asian divers. There's like me and my friend who's half. So literally one and a half
Oh,
of us.
wow. That's
Yep.
way
No,
less than I would not have guessed, one and a half.
it is not diverse.
Yeah.
And so I had a ton of people being like, hey, Tiff, they need an Asian diver. And
Yeah.
you're here, you exist. And I was like, well, great. I'm glad I could fill the bill. So I ended up on that set and it was super fun because Dan is a service that I use as a diver. It gives me a lot of peace of mind to know, like when I go on a dive trip that something goes weird, I could call Dan and they'll have advice.
Yeah.
So now I'm in their training video. They had me play like clumsy tourist number one, and I tripped on a rock and split my head.
Hell
And so
yeah.
they have fake blood and all this stuff. So now, whenever all my friends who are newer divers are getting trained and taking their courses or getting re-upped on their certifications, they always are like, wait, is this you? And they'll send me a picture of the video. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's me.
That was awesome. Um, okay, a little bit more about about exploration though too. So so we talked about saving the planet, doing all this stuff, but let's just talk about exploring the planet. And this is kind of like, this is kind of a weird question, so take it however you want, but it's about learning.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know, man. I keep coming back to that rock in my mind, and I keep thinking like, you gotta let go of that rock, Doug. But that's neither here nor there. No, what I was gonna say is, what is one of the most unexpected things like you've learned as an explorer?
I think that's a
Something
great question.
like,
Um,
something where you're like, you jumped in the water and you're like, I didn't know that, whatever.
so I'm a touchy-feely kind of person. So it's not going to be a scientific fact or anything. I think for me, through all the different explorations I've done, it's really that like magic still exists. Like you could still chase
Yeah,
magic in this modern life, right? When I am exploring, whether that's like walking through the rainforest or diving or on a ship somewhere, like I am just like, I feel like I could be back in the 1800s and be like one of those pioneering explorers. Like that same feeling still exists, even in this like crazy internet connected world. You can still disconnect from all that so that you can connect to the planet that we're standing on. And I
yeah,
think knowing that I could tap into that anytime I go explore is one of the coolest things I've taken away from this life. Like
yeah,
I have my own little like magic pot that I can like jump into.
yeah. I love that answer, and it's so true. And I absolutely believe in that too. Like that, when you do unplug and you do go like connect to the earth,
Mhm.
and it's magic becomes real again
Yeah.
almost immediately because you're not looking at a screen, you're not, you know, no offense to podcasts, because I'm doing a podcast right now, but there's not a podcast in your ears and you're not hearing, people discuss all the problems in the world or all that stuff. It's just like you're out there and it's you and the planet and the planet's magic. And like, I mean, I have that experience just with, small, very small expeditions, like, hiking or whatever. Like you see a cool animal, something you weren't expecting to see. And like that can feel so, uh, yeah, there's no other word for it. Magical. Feel magical, Like if you ever
Yeah.
just go out and like if you just come across a moose, just blows your mind. You're a
Yeah,
kid
they're
again.
huge.
You're a kid again. So, I mean, I don't know.
There, there's this one quote that I really like, and I'm gonna mess it up, but it's like when when it's like when you go somewhere it's quiet enough, you can finally hear your own voice, right? And I think we're so chattered at all day that, like in nature, it's like it's actually quiet, and then you can actually see what's yours, right? What is your voice saying? And I think that's really special.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a really open-ended question, and I I love how you just take these things all over the place. So really take this anywhere. It doesn't have to be like, oh, well, it was specifically in Antarctica when I did this and I saw this whale
Yeah.
or what. But what would you say has been your greatest adventure since you've kind of like changed your life path, since you've left law and gone into just exploring the planet?
Okay. So physically, I would say swimming with the orcas is pretty up there.
Yeah, it
It
has got to be pretty good.
it's like the water is like emerald black, and they're black and white, so you don't really see them coming until they're close enough that you see their eye patches and their saddle patches. And so just imagine like it's pitch black and you're like, what's out there? And then all of a sudden you just like see it coming close, and then it moves almost cinematically. Like I know they're going so fast, but your brain does that thing that happens in movies where
Yeah,
it slows down and you're like passing by each other and you're like, wow, you see its eyeball and it's seeing me and I'm seeing it, and
yeah,
it's crazy. But on a like meta level,
yeah,
not like a specific adventure, I think the greatest adventure of my life has been realizing that like it's fully mine to create, with the responsibility of that, with the joy of that, with the challenge of that. And like I am fully in control of my life and I get to choose what I do. So when I choose to have this life, I work harder than I did as a lawyer, but I know I also have all the freedom to do all the weird shit I like to do.
yeah,
And so the greatest adventure has just been like making myself, right? Making this version of myself that I personally think is really cool.
Yeah.
And knowing that that's the only opinion that actually matters.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. And man, both answers equally true and equally awesome. But man, the way you described like interacting with an orca, like, man, I can't get that image out of my mind. That is like, you've given me like a brand new life goal that I truly I intend to pursue. Like, I want to
Oh, it's
figure out.
super, it's very doable. Just like we will literally talk and we will get you there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just I mean, like, because basically all you have to do is get there and then jump in the water, and then you're doing it.
Yep.
You just have to let go of the rock, and that's
Yep.
that's jumping off the boat. And I bet that's scary. I bet that's hard at first. So,
Yep.
Tiffany, thank you so much. I know you are so busy out here doing so much for the planet, and taking your time out of your day to come on my Views Around podcast and tell me all these stories and get me so hyped up and make me feel positive and like not just that's what I want. I want to feel positivity, and I want to feel hope. And I don't want to just constantly be like, "Ah, they got us, man. The fossil fuel companies got us. We'll never win." That's not the way to be, and that's not the way I ever want to feel. And you really, like, today you showed up and you like fill me back up again with like the hope and excitement and like the energy to like move forward and really fight for the planet again. Like, really, like have a solid positive mindset on it, and not just like a desperate, let's do whatever. So I only have one last question for you, and it is where can people find you, follow you, maybe check out like some of your publications, things you've written, some of your speeches, just everything that you have out there for people to learn from.
Yeah. My Instagram is what I update the most. It's at Tiff Makes Waves with two F's. Um, my website is my name, so www.tiffanyduong.com. And then from those two, you can probably link out or find all the other things. But again, the two nonprofits are Telecoral and the Seabirds Foundation.
Yes. Don't forget that. Telecoral, Seabirds Foundation, Tiff Makes Waves. Guys, go check out everything Tiff does. It is amazing. And it is just such a pleasure to finally get to meet you in person, or whatever this is. I mean, it's, I feel like talking on Zooms in
It's
person.
modern in
It's
person.
modern in person. uh, yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And thank you so much.
Thank you.